Hello and welcome to the NAG Online Podcast. This is the E3 Special Edition 2016. I'm your host, Wesley Fick.
And I'm Matthew Fick.
So, this is going to be E3 Day 1. We're going to go through some of the news that popped out from the Electronic Arts and Bethesda segments, their conferences. And we're just going to run through some of the things that we thought was interesting. And then maybe just present our thoughts and see what we like, what we didn't like, and
we had lots of thoughts.
What really got our goat last night.
So the EA conference kicked things off at about 10 p.m. local time. Whereas, what was the first thing that happened?
The first thing is we were both really confused because they were doing two conferences at once, live streaming and switching from one to the other, from London to Los Angeles.
You know, I get what they were trying to do. They were trying to create a really good dynamic. They were trying to make it seem like there were two co-presenters sitting in a room recording a podcast, like we are. But instead, the problem with having two separate conferences is you have two different crowds you need to rile up. So that's twice as many people going on stage and asking, hey, how's everyone doing?
You get the American crowd and the British crowd, and you need to try appeal to both of them.
So the American crowd is getting all the Madden jokes, and the British crowd is getting all the soccer jokes.
Yeah, they even said something like England wasn't too hot last night.
Yeah, they were really trying to bring the humor, and they were doing a whole bunch of different comedy bits.
Just one thing aside, what I think is that the way that they presented it means that EA possibly thinks that they're growing too big for E3. And in the future, they may have something like this, but extended to other shows in, say, Australia, some country in Europe, maybe Germany.
So instead of doing one big E3 conference, they'll instead do multiple ones across the globe?
It'll almost be like Nintendo Direct, but it won't be Nintendo Direct. It'll be E3 Direct, where
EA3 all over the world,
where they invite the journalists that couldn't make it to Los Angeles, to the US, because it is very expensive to fly there. Invite the journalists to come and play live demos and that sort of thing, all of the games, and they get the same presentation and they get the same options to talk about the game, to chat with developers, that sort of thing, locally, rather than regurgitate the news that other people have been talking about.
I guess it is an interesting development, and yeah, seeing something like an EA Direct could likely result of this. So EA's conference kicked off with a demonstration of Titanfall 2. In particular, they were showing off the single-player trailer. And the unfortunate thing is that they showed off the trailer before the conference actually began. So they gave it a big fuss and bother on the stage, but we'd already seen it. And I quite like the look of it. It explores the bond between a Titan and their pilot. And the Titan's got these three directives. It reminds me a lot of Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics.
Yeah, the first one was link to pilot. The second one is fulfill the mission or complete the mission. And the third one is protect the pilot
at all costs.
Yeah, well.
Did you think the Titan sounded a lot like Optimus Prime? I'm not being racist.
There definitely was an Optimus sort of voice in there. And I think they intentionally tried to make it a male character to avoid any comparisons with GLaDOS.
Also, the Titan's designation began with VT. What do you think VT stands for?
Well, it's BT.
No, it's VT.
No, BT.
It was VT.
BT.
It was VT. You're
because when the guy's falling from the sky, he shouts VT. Why would it be VT?
Vertical tank.
You're making this up.
No, I'm telling you, it's VT.
You're really making this up. I think it's BT. Battle tank. Battle thing. That's what it is.
Do you think
Battle thing 7274?
Maybe it means bipedal tank.
All that.
I'm telling you, it's VT. You'll watch it. I'll prove you wrong. You'll feel like a huge tool.
I've watched it already.
You didn't watch it enough.
I put the volume up and everything, and I should have been able to listen to hear VT, but I didn't.
We're gonna watch the trailer again after this, and I'm gonna prove to Wes what a wrong person he is.
Anyway,
what happened after Titanfall?
So
Oh yeah, one more thing. Titanfall is now coming to PS4, so it'll be on PS4, Xbox One, and PC.
Hopefully they'll actually sell it in South Africa.
Maybe it'll even have cross-platform play. It seems like the right kind of game for it.
Maybe.
We'll see when we get there.
Maybe. Anyway, so let's skip to... Okay, so they had the Challenger, the Premier, and the major in-game leagues or events.
Yeah, EA is rolling out these new branches of competitive play, basically. And it seems like EA is trying to capitalize on all the different franchises they have so they can cover as much esports as possible.
And it looks like a bunch of this stuff is going to be done in-game. There'll be in-game tournaments for FIFA, for Madden, I guess. Possibly also Call of Duty, that sort of thing. We already have some sort of thing like this now in Origin.
I think you might mean Battlefield.
Is it in Battlefield? Because I might be getting this wrong. In FIFA, in one of the previous FIFAs, you could go to a list where it would show you upcoming tournaments and rank and competitions that you could participate in, and then you would be able to put your name in for that and then play.
Sounds likely, but it looks like they're going to be rolling out these 3 leagues across the spectrum of their games. And I'm sure once they announce a new Need for Speed or Burnout game, they'll probably include racing in their roster as well.
Okay, so the 3 leagues, the Challenger League is basically run by players. You can have players who create Challenger Leagues amongst themselves and among your friends, and then you can play against them. There might be some rewards that you get, similar to like Steam cards or Steam XP or whatever.
Maybe some kind of Origin points.
You'll get drops and that sort of thing. Then there'll be the Premier events, and these are hosted by EA, or rather they're just set up by EA. They'll offer you, I don't know, prizes, maybe bragging rights, things, and then the major tournament is going to be EA hosted, which is where they have the competitions that you are familiar with, like the international, some larger type things, where they also stream them. They invite you to come and play, and then you're at the event physically.
And then after announcing the 3 leagues, they moved on to show some new features of the upcoming Madden game. And honestly, I kind of blacked out for this one. I understand nothing about American football.
I care nothing about Madden at all.
It's really fun to watch YouTubers play it, especially when they play it badly, but that's the extent of me caring.
Did you see if Madden had anything about Frostbite, the Frostbite engine?
I don't remember.
Okay, we'll get to that later.
Anyway, they announced some things for the next FIFA game, FIFA 17. And, they announced the usual ones like improved AI or new aggressive tactics and such. But what I really like is they have a single-player mode. And it's a story-driven mode where you play as a rising star named Alex Hunter. And you might disagree, but I honestly believe more sports games need storylines. It worked out great for Fight Night Championship. It formed a more effective tutorial than any kind of in-game tutorial. It just led you through all the processes. And I would really love to see a storyline come into their next UFC game.
So it would sort of be like playing the game, and then you have a storyline ripped out from the replacements or any given Sunday.
Something like that. I'd like to see a lot of melodrama and stats in this, so it becomes something like FIFA Final Fantasy.
So basically, if EA ever makes a game about karate tournaments, it'll have a Karate Kid single-player campaign.
I don't care. I just want a montage.
So EA's basically rolled out Frostbite everywhere to both their AAA titles like Battlefront and Battlefield 1 as well, and as well as Star Wars
and FIFA 17.
FIFA, that extreme golf game.
Now, this is really cool because I like that EA is turning Frostbite into their platform engine. Think of Frostbite as EA's version of the Unreal Engine. It means that any EA affiliate will be getting really familiar with Frostbite, and each game across their consoles will provide a very similar experience.
And that's if they give them licensing for it.
Yeah, they probably will.
I think for at least the smaller games made by smaller studios, those will be done on Unity or something similar. But it has some interesting implications because that means that in the future there'll be a gateway to getting into EA games. The Frostbite engine it can be very, very demanding. It can be also very light depending on how you code it. So if you create a game using the Frostbite engine that requires at least a quad-core processor, that means even if it's quite a light game, a dual-core processor won't be able to play it with as much ease. So you'll get into the situation where something as simple as FIFA will require a quad-core processor, and you won't be able to play it on the budget laptops, that sort of thing. Really, really low-end hardware, because that was always a staple of some of the games that they made, like FIFA and Battlefield, because you could always play them on lower-end machines.
And despite EA's push to eSports, it looks like they're not going for the playable on everything approach that Riot or Valve are going for. With their eSports, they try to make it playable on absolutely everything, even a really low-end laptop. But it looks like EA hasn't embraced that mindset yet. Anyway, keeping with Frostbite, Frostbite engine is also powering Mass Effect Andromeda. And that looks really cool. We got to see a little bit of footage for Andromeda. Not too much. The basic storyline is that humanity is trying to find a new home, and they're looking in the Andromeda galaxy for a suitable place. Anyway, we got to see a couple of the planets that they showed off. There's desert worlds, jungle worlds, so on. They're introducing some new aliens, apparently, although we only saw a couple of very similar ones, like the giant Thresher Maul. And the Leviathan's back, so driving that giant APC looks amazing again. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to Andromeda.
Also based on Frostbite, just so you know. So let's skip on to the EA Originals announcement. So this looked something. This was tied in with a new announcement, the only new game announcement.
Only new game at the E3 at the EA conference.
That was called FE by.
FE. It was by I think it was a German company named Zoink Studio.
Its name is just FE. We don't know if that's if that's some strange play on words where it's actually called iron and it's just represented by its symbol, but I don't know.
It was metal all along.
It's very weird.
Anyway, Fee looks quite cute. You play as some small cub that is woken up in a strange world, and it's up to you to interact with the animals around you, and you do this by basically singing to them.
What is the game that it mimics? Ori.
The internet is blown up, and they're saying that it looks a lot like Ori and the Blind Forest.
It's definitely very indie. It looks indie.
Yes, it looks indie, except it's being published by EA. So it's being published with all of EA's money behind it. And this is part of something called the EA Originals program. So last year,
which we know absolutely nothing about.
They've revealed very little about it. They've given their mission statement and their goals. But in general, EA Origins is EA's new publishing platform for creative and basically indie games. Remember last year they showed off Unravel by Coldwood? Well, Unravel was basically the pilot project for EA Origins. It was a small game that wouldn't have gotten as much notice if EA hadn't propped it up. And now Fee is their first official EA Origins game. So we might see a lot of small scale, highly creative games come out of this.
But the EA Originals thing also looks similar, and it sounds like it's set up similar to Steam Greenlight, because EA will go and partner with small studios in order to give them both copyright protections and also money and advertising funds and that sort of thing.
So maybe there'll be some kind of program where you can submit your game to EA and then get it voted on by a community.
And they said that they want to give the developers 100% of the profits.
Now you see, they said they want to give them 100% of the profits, but will they?
Will they really do it? That's the question.
We're just kidding. I'm sure there's some kind of financial incentive for EA in this.
Where does the money roll in for EA? Because that's all EA is really concerned about at that point. Money.
So speaking of money, that led to a montage of all the Star Wars games that EA is working on. And the ever wonderful Jade Raymond came on stage. Jade Raymond was the lead director of Assassin's Creed 1 and 2, I think.
She was the creative director of Assassin's Creed 1.
Yes. So she came onto the stage to announce that her studio and Visceral Games and Respawn and the mobile division of EA, they're all busy working on a bunch of Star Wars games. The unfortunate thing is that they said they're working on these games, but they didn't show anything.
Everything looked like a 2018 or 2019 title because there was no, aside from some artwork teasers, some short visual teasers, there was really nothing much.
There is some things that we can speculate from this. Jade Raymond did say that her team is working with DICE to create new content for Star Wars Battlefront, and they said they want to deliver content that fans have been asking for. So I think they're working on a single-player portion to Star Wars Battlefront. Maybe one that takes you through some famous battles and lets you take various character classes for a spin.
There were some little hints and tidbits thrown in there. Like, for instance, there was a cutaway to showing some guy working on a Death Star map, obviously for the next Battlefront, as well as jumping into a TIE fighter. That's going to be a thing. And then there was also someone who was looking around a X-Wing cockpit while wearing a PlayStation VR headset. Sony did say in March that they're doing some sort of PlayStation VR thing for Battlefront, so maybe that's an addition.
I remember there was a short Star Wars VR experience. I just read about it on some places, but I never actually looked into it. Anyway, the only real new footage is they did show off a very, very brief segment from Jade Raymond's Star Wars game. And it showed a unnamed protagonist wearing a black leather trench coat, leaving a home in Tatooine, and as he steps out, some TIE fighters fly over, and that's it. That's all we got.
Is that developed by Visceral?
No, Visceral is working on their own third-person action game, so whether it's Star Wars 1313 or whether it's that the Darth Maul game, we don't know. But I can't remember what Jade Raymond's studio was called, but she's working on her own. Their team's working on their own game.
But yeah, it looked very interesting. So
Amy Hennig, one of the writers for the Uncharted series, she came on the screen as well, and the internet erupted into cheers. Of course, she's a very talented writer. She didn't really talk much about what her project is. She just expressed how excited she is to do it.
Lots and lots and lots of Star Wars stuff, but no titles, no names, no release dates.
It was basically a montage of people saying how excited they were to work with Star Wars.
Look at all this stuff. Please be excited.
Be excited. Don't look.
Please be excited. Please understand. And then I guess we won't talk about Battlefield 1 because that's already done to death everywhere else. But what are your feelings just on the EA announcement alone? Because there was virtually no new games announced, except for one small indie title. Everything is, if we don't count Battlefield 1 and FIFA, and maybe Mass Effect. I don't think Mass Effect's going to come out this year.
Probably not. It might come out next year in March. That's
So
my guess.
we're only really, and Madden 17, we're only really getting 3 new games out of this conference thing.
All in all, it was a very weak start to E3, all told. EA seemed to focus a lot on presentation and stage presence, and they were cracking jokes with one of the European Football League managers. But unfortunately, they had nothing to show.
That was a very, very awkward meeting.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that the soccer fans knew exactly what was going on, but we didn't. So their entire conference showed off one new game, and then it showed off a little bit more gameplay for Battlefield 1. Game looks great, but they didn't show off much gameplay. And all in all, it feels like EA has... They've shown off all these new announcements before E3, and they've left nothing for the conference itself.
And then we'll hop into Bethesda. This probably already wins all of the E3 hype.
I don't know yet, but they really, really know how to start a press conference.
Okay, so Bethesda started off their E3 conference with a little old school notes, where they started up the conference with this sort of DOS overlay where you typed in the commands to go into the directory to start up the E3 press conference thing. In there, by the way, in the beginning, there was a little hint where you see all the names for the different games that they're working on and the projects. And Wolfenstein, the New Order. There was something called Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, which also has an unreleased reveal date. It's just got stars in there where there should be numbers.
That sounds pretty cool, but this whole DOS opening was just a way to announce with great fanfare that id Software is working on a new Quake game. So yeah, Quake's back. We've already got Doom this year, and now Quake is back, and it's called Quake Champions. The last Quake game we got came out in 2004 or 5, and that was Quake 4. And since then, the franchise has kind of just languished.
Yeah, it's a 20-year franchise.
Yeah.
It's a very, very long time to be out.
So, given how successful Doom was and how much that's blowing up the internet, it's fairly certain that Quake will do the same thing. And they're really embracing Quake's multiplayer aspects. And what they spoke about in their conference was that you'd play as one of several heroes, each with their own powers. So it sounds like a combination of Quake and Overwatch.
Yeah, the trailer was very stylized.
Trailer was pretty damn cool.
It definitely looked very cinematic.
They also announced, did they talk about user-created maps for Quake Champions? I'm pretty sure they did.
No, but it's almost a given that they're going to have snap map support for it.
It
so
makes
that
a lot
means
of
that
sense.
you're going to get maps anyway.
Yes, just let the community make your content for you.
If they can't get any of the older maps from previous games put in, then the community will do that for them. So that'll be interesting.
Still, there was an excellent way to start off the conference. Just no announcement, no talking, straight into Quake. It's a good show.
They did say that it was going to have a bigger focus on eSports, but they never detail what exactly they meant by that.
They did say they would show off more in QuakeCon 2016.
We'll just have to wait for that then. And then we go straight from that into Elder Scrolls Legends.
Elder Scrolls Legends.
I didn't even remember that this thing existed.
I vaguely remembered that they announced it last year, but ever since then I haven't really been following it.
It looks like a clone of Hearthstone, just like every other Hearthstone clone.
That's a very astute way of putting it.
Well, yes. How else are you going to make a turn-based online card game?
So yeah, Elder Scrolls Legends is a tactical trading card game. Basically, you play a monster or a character into a lane, and then either you attack other monsters in your same lane, or you attack your enemy's hero. And it looks like it's basically built on the foundation that Hearthstone laid. It makes sense. I mean, Hearthstone's a great game, so why not copy something great?
And there's a story now for the 10 people on the earth who probably play this game.
Well, I'll probably play it. It looks interesting.
So 11 people.
Okay, 11 people. I'm number 11. So yeah, we won't go into much detail about the storyline because that's not why anyone's going to play it. But Elder Scrolls Legends allows you to play famous characters and monsters and creatures from the Elder Scrolls franchise.
You know what those cutscenes remind me of?
What?
The cutscenes from Morrowind. Morrowind also had sort of like a cartoonish drawn, or it was actually a painted background, but the images were moving, and then you just had voiceovers on it.
It was quite similar, but honestly, that's not a stylistic choice. That's called an animatic, and you do that because it's really, really cheap.
And because it can run on tablets.
Yeah, it saves you money instead of hiring a full motion capture crew.
And you can just pay some poor artist peanuts, and you can do it. So yeah, story mode coming for that. I'm not really sure if I care, but maybe it's cool.
I care. I've been a huge fan of Elder Scrolls for a while, and I really enjoy mobile games, so I'll give Elder Scrolls Legends a look.
Is there a storyline component for Hearthstone?
No, not really. Hearthstone is just play cards. Although they did release separate expansion packs, and those have single-player missions, basically. So in the base game, there isn't much storyline, but they introduce storyline in different free expansions.
We won't spend too much time on the Fallout announcements because those have all been detailed for the most part.
They look quite cool. I'm glad Bethesda's actually giving us the tools to create horrific contraptions that torture NPCs officially.
Like they're adding on elevators.
elevators, conveyor belts.
There's this really weird ball type thing, almost like balance, where you just add balls into your puzzles.
Yes, just add balls into your puzzles. It makes everything better. But
and what the hell is it with? What the hell's up with the conveyor belts? How does that even? What?
You'll have to buy the season pass and find out.
What do you do with it?
I don't know. I mean,
how does it even sort out things? Because it said that you could sort out things.
I'm guessing you'll have different nodes along the conveyor belt that you can program to take out a specific item or to introduce a specific item. I can't imagine what these things would be used for, but that's why I don't work at Bethesda. So as far as other content goes, they also showed off another settlement creation content pack that allows you to build your own vault and allows you to conduct sick and twisted experiments on people for science.
That's going to be really, really fun.
That's going to be fun. They also showed off what I think will be the next major storyline DLC. It's called Nuka World. And it takes your lone survivor to a Nuka-Cola themed theme park. So, yeah, they didn't show any storyline, but it'll be a new area. There'll be new weapons and armors and people to meet, people to kill, all that good stuff.
I don't think it'll be limited to just that area, though. There might be...
It'll probably be the theme park and the surrounding area. Imagine if it's Disneyland and the car park. I think that's what Nuka World will be like.
So it's almost going to be like running through the theme park in Zombieland.
It might be, except
there'll be ghouls everywhere.
There won't be any Woody Harrelson either,
and no Twinkies.
Anyway, keeping with Fallout, they also showed off some new things for Fallout Shelter. There's a new quest system coming where instead of just sending your survivors out into the wastes, now you can actually go with them into the wastes and control them through separate locations. Also, really
they're not gonna die stupidly.
Well, they might, but if they do die, it'll be entirely your fault.
That's great.
Anyway, Fallout Shelter is also coming to PC, and that's great because eventually someone's going to mod it, and they're going to make it more complex, and they're going to make it more like a Sims game. So I'm really, really looking forward to the mods for Fallout Shelter.
It'll be interesting to see how they distribute that, because if they do it on Windows through the Windows Store, that means no mods will be available. But if they do it through Steam,
I'm guessing they'll do it through Steam.
Yeah, if they do it through Steam, then you can do things like Steam Workshop, or will they even do Workshop? Or will they just use the Bethesda launcher to add mods in?
I wouldn't be surprised if it allows you to collect Fallout Shelter lunchboxes and sell them on the Steam market.
That would be amazing.
It would be quite cool.
That would make a lot of people quite happy.
So
more things to collect.
Speaking of more things to collect, Skyrim HD was announced. I think they had a much better name for it, but it's basically Skyrim HD.
Skyrim Special Edition.
Special Definitive Revengeance Edition.
HD Bloom yada 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 God Rays Edition.
So it's Skyrim, as we all know and love, with all of its DLC, and it's coming to PS4 and Xbox One. And it's got
and PC. I actually found that out just now.
And PC, great. So it's got a whole bunch of new shaders and new effects, and I think it ups the frame rate as well.
Yeah, it might be 60 frames a second on the console.
So I'm definitely getting that. I loved Skyrim on PC and on PS3, and I'd really like to play it again. And
possibly a 64-bit version for the PC.
Mm.
That'd be lovely, because then that gets rid of most of the problems with running a game on 32-bit executables.
Unfortunately, they didn't announce a new Elder Scrolls, but that'd be too much to hope for.
It's interesting because there'll be a lot of people who might jump on this, because instead of getting Skyrim and then using mods to make the game look like Skyrim Special Edition, you can just get Skyrim Special Edition and use the mods from sanctioned by Bethesda to do things and run things in the game.
And keeping with the Elder Scrolls, they showed off some new things for Elder Scrolls Online, and they rattled off a bunch of the Elder Scrolls Online's accolades as well. It's quite a well played game, actually. They just showed off some things for the new Dark Brotherhood questline, and I'm not much of an MMORPG player, so I'm probably not going to get too much into that.
Yeah, and also Elder Scrolls Online 1 Tamriel. That's where you can go to all of the places inside Tamriel.
Yes, the base
If you
game,
just like exploring.
the base game of ESO had this ridiculous feature where you were locked into a starting race, and those starting races were locked into starting zones. Now they've taken that all out, so you can play as any race and start in any zone. Which honestly, they should have done that right from the beginning.
I would have expected mods to try to do that, but since it's online, it's server side.
Yeah, as soon as you start trying to mod an online game, then you're just going to be wiping the competition and stomping people.
We also seem to have skipped a bit further in the timeline, because before the Elder Scrolls Online announcements, there was Prey.
Prey is back. Prey looks good.
I had no idea that it was coming. No one else did.
Prey is being developed by, Arcane Studios?
Arcane Studios.
Same studio that's actually working on Dishonored 2. So, Prey...
Wait, is it Arcane?
I'm pretty sure it was Arcane.
I'll have to look again. I'll see later.
So yeah, Prey's been worked on by Arcane, and it looks entirely different to the first Prey that came out in 2006 or so. It also looks nothing like the absolutely cancelled Prey 2.
There's some sort of Groundhog Day element to it in the beginning.
Yeah, it shows the same character, Morgan Yu, waking up, and every time he wakes up, his eyes are more bloodshot and things are going wrong slightly. When they spoke about the game, they said that it's got a psychological thriller aspect. And basically, Morgan is the subject of scientific research, and then aliens come in, and things go bad.
It's got some sort of Halo themes in it, because when you see Morgan wake up and look at the ship around him, it looks like he's on a ring-type vessel. So it's probably going to extend like far out into space. And
apparently it all takes place in a large space station. It looks a little bit like BioShock with some Groundhog Day. And yeah,
Doom.
It looks great. Maybe a little bit of Doom.
Maybe some Doom.
Doom 3, because Doom 3 was the horror game.
And it's also interesting because I don't know if it'll have any ties to the original Prey, because you had your main character, spoilers, plow his ship into the sun to, what was it, reignite it, or to just destroy everything? I can't remember.
I'm quite happy with that. It'd be cool if every Prey game was an entirely new game. Either that, or they can just show off this Prey for a couple of years and then quietly cancel it. And then a few years later, they can announce Prey all over again.
You know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see Prey turn into sort of this BioShock in space type franchise, where there's always a man, there's always a lighthouse, but it's set in space.
I would play BioShock in space.
And there's just various different story elements and that sort of thing.
Although I think BioShock in space is called System Shock.
Well,
yeah, we kind of worked ourselves into a corner there.
BioShock is the spiritual successor to System Shock, but it's not exactly the same thing. Like, for instance, in System Shock, is it considered a villain, the AI?
Shodan. Yeah, Shodan's the villain.
Yeah, she's basically considered the villain, but she's incredibly creepy. And there's apparently one particular section in the game where she overturns the ship that you're in. Everything's upside down. Everything just goes. Everything goes to shit. It's just very, very creepy and crazy and scary. And
I need to actually play the System Shock games. I've got System Shock 2. Anyway, moving on, we got some announcements about Doom. Doom was released just a month ago, and there's a review of it up on the site. And from what I've seen, it looks amazing. So the first level of Doom is available for free for a week. For some reason, it's not available for free forever. But I guess this is a good way to get people to act on impulse.
But I mean, it's basically a demo at that point. Why not just keep it on Steam for the first level? There's like 20-ish levels on Doom, so you're only getting 1/20th of the content. And if you want to do that just to get a feel of it, and just to see if your PC will play it, because you obviously have to play Doom at 60 frames a second. There's no playing anything lower than that is just not on. It needs to be fast-paced. And you need to have some way of checking if it runs on your machine first, without doing the whole buy game, refund it on Steam type of thing.
But yeah, just the fact that they're doing this is pretty cool, and hopefully it'll get a lot more people to buy the game. And some changes are coming to the multiplayer as well. There's new game modes being added that'll be compatible with all the maps. There'll be a one flag capture the flag, as well as a traditional deathmatch. And fairly soon there'll be some premium multiplayer content, which brings 3 new maps, new weapons, and new abilities.
So let's skip to the end of the conference. Towards the end, Bethesda announced something called Bethesda VR,
which it looks like it's all based on the HTC Vive.
There's this project where they're going to make Doom and Fallout 4 compatible with the HTC Vive. Now, they haven't said anything about what exactly Bethesda VR is. Is it part of the open source VR project? Is it compatible with Valve stuff?
I suspect it's just going to be their games in VR, so you can truly feel immersed in Fallout.
Yeah. But I mean, I just like to have some sort of indication how this works, because if it works for the HTC Vive and not the Oculus Rift, then that means that even if there's basic functionality, you're not getting the full experience. And then if they only make it for the HTC Vive, then that means that only PC players will enjoy the benefits of it. If they don't do it for PlayStation VR, then obviously the next PlayStation 4K console thing will miss out on those sort of features. You'll miss out on the ability to experience Fallout 4 in VR on PS4.
We'll have to wait and see, but even if it just starts off on PC and then maybe moves to other consoles, I'm happy with that. So, towards the end of the conference, to close it out, they gave a long look at Dishonored 2. And last year, Fallout 4 was the major focus of the Bethesda conference, and this year, Dishonored 2 was the major focus of the conference. And it's really cool that they're showing so much attention to this game. So Dishonored 2 is being made by Arcane Studios, the same team who did Dishonored 1, and years ago they did Arx Fatalis. And Dishonored 2 looks great. It's a pretty game. It looks really, really good. It takes place 15 years after Dishonored 1, and you can play as either Corvo Attano, the same guy from Dishonored 1, or the Empress, Emily Caldwin.
I also recall making the point that it looked like Mirror's Edge, and then you finished it off with a Mirror's Edge in a steampunk world.
Mirror's Edge steampunk. They've changed the animation for the parkour system. In Dishonored 1, it was basically just vaulting over things and jumping. In Dishonored 2, it shows a lot more animations of how you vault over these things. It seems like they paid a little bit more attention to that, and it should be quite immersive.
And there is some parkour as well.
There's parkour, and there's the return of new powers. So yeah, there's new powers like freezing time. There's something called Shadow Walk that only Emily can do, and various ziplining and grapple hooking abilities.
I think one of the other new things that was announced about the game was this ability to traverse timelines, to see different timelines and then switch between them.
Yeah, it's called the Outsider's Timepiece. It occupies your left hand, and when you look through it, you can see what this environment looked like years and years in the past.
Yeah, it was very interesting because that'll make certain puzzles very challenging, because you'll have to think about how you might impact things in one timeline that affects the other, and that sort of thing.
The context of how it worked at the conference was that the player character was going through a mansion where they couldn't use any of their supernatural abilities except the timepiece. So they had to sneak around in the present and in the past to try and navigate various doorways. And in the past, the mansion was crawling with guards. But in the present, it's decrepit and run down. So you need to go into the past to get past obstacles, and then you go back to the present to avoid guards. What was interesting about this is switching back and forth between these two time periods, it would really, really freak out the guards. So Dishonored 2 basically turns you into the antagonist of a horror movie to these guards.
Yeah, the guards just get killed by nothing.
Yeah.
You can really be some sort of supernatural villain type thing just by killing these people and watching them.
Yeah, these guards are straight up going through a horror movie right there.
That's quite traumatic.
So anyway, to close off the talk about Dishonored 2, they gave some detail about the Dishonored 2 Collector's Edition. Collector's Edition comes with Corvo's mask and Emily's ring, so you can cosplay as both of them at the same time. And it also bundles in the Dishonored Definitive Edition for PS4 or Xbox One. And that's pretty cool if you haven't played that game before. It gives you some time to catch up on the storyline.
Nothing mentioned about the PC version, though.
That's because definitive editions for consoles are basically just the PC edition.
Because if Skyrim got a special edition, but it looks really different from the originals, even from the PC version, then why didn't they do the one for Dishonored?
Well, I've seen the definitive edition of Dishonored, and it looks like it's been upgraded, but it doesn't look like they've changed major aspects of the graphics engine. It just looks prettier.
Oh, that was very cool.
So yeah, that brought the Bethesda conference to a close, and that also ended off EA or E3 Day 1 pre-show. So yeah, all in all, first day of E3 pre-show was promising, except for EA. EA had a very, very weak conference. I like their announcement about EA Originals. I like what Fee looks like. And I appreciate that they're putting a storyline into a sports game. But other than that, they didn't really have anything to talk about, and they talked about it for an hour and a half. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening, and hopefully you'll hear from us again very soon.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.